Hi, and welcome back to another session of Your Mindset Moment. I'm lead coach and founder of Raising Our Resilience, Vanessa. MED. I'm here to share some thoughts about what to avoid during your child's tantrum. These are three very common mistakes that parents and caregivers make all the time. I know because I've done them, and I've now had surveyed over 400 families and worked with hundreds of families over the last 20 years. And I've spent 10,000 plus hours with children. So I've been my way, I know my way around a tantrum. And boy, have I made some mistakes. So let me save you some time. Okay. So first one that I want you to be aware of that's really, really important is that you need to make sure that you're not in any way picking a fight with the feeling. And what I mean by that is that we can oftentimes have this response when a big emotion comes up. And tantrum usually has anger, but can also have fear and sadness built into it. So these strong core emotions, when they come up, oftentimes it triggers in us a response of, we need to get this emotion settled. We need to stop it. We need to suppress it. It's too much. It's not okay. And we'll immediately make it wrong that the child is upset in the first place. Now, this isn't the same as saying you need to agree with why the child is upset. Child drops their ice cream, screams about it. You don't need to say, yeah, we should scream when our ice cream falls, But the opposite of picking a fight with a feeling isn't agreeing with the reason for the feeling. It's just getting down with the fact that this feeling is here and it has a message for us. Okay. So instead of picking a fight with a feeling, you might just acknowledge that the feeling is here. Oh, sweetie, you seem really sad and angry that your ice cream fell. Just putting a name to it. Another thing that's opposite of fighting a feeling, picking a fight with a feeling, is helping the message come through. Because every time that behavior gets mixed up with emotion, usually all behavior is communication and every emotion has a message. So let's help this message come through by acknowledging one thing that makes sense about this feeling. Oh, well, yeah, it makes sense that you're sad because you were really looking forward to having that ice cream and now it's not in your hand anymore. It's not the same as saying you should scream when your ice cream falls and you'll never get an ice cream and all the things you're saying are true, right? It's just picking one thing that makes sense. And what that does is a couple of things. It gets the message across so that the emotional sort of message that's trying to come through the child maybe will stop needing to come through as strongly. It can actually diffuse the situation quite a bit at times. Sometimes they need to hear you say it 3 to 5 times before they really believe that the message has been heard. So just be aware of that. One time may not be enough because their brain is still trying to sort out what's going on. And they're misfiring. They don't have integrated brain activity. They're sort of all over the place, right? The other thing that you can do around this is just really finding that one thing that makes sense, when that helps them to know that you're not picking a side against them, that you're actually maybe a viable thought partner or coping partner or co-regulation partner for how to navigate this experience because you get it. Now, the younger your kids are, the more plain your language needs to be. The older your kids are, the more complex you need to be. And that's where we start to do things like bring in stories from our own experience, maybe talk about the nuances a little bit, like, oh, you might be feeling this and this, the ambiguity. You might bring in more than the core emotions. Like, yeah, it's so strange to feel angry and envious and like you miss somebody all at the same time, right? And so just help them with not only articulating that, but help them see that you get it and you're perceiving the situation. And if you don't have enough information, admit it. So number two mistake to avoid, besides picking a fight with a feeling, we got that one, right? Sarah's here, nice. And I got someone here on Facebook as well, say hi. So we got that, Sarah. We got that, listeners on Facebook. Replay, folks, right? Don't pick a fight with a feeling. Okay. The next one that's so important is to really read the situation of like, how upset is this child? Like, how upset are they actually? Because if they are extremely upset, you're going to need to help them calm down as your first priority before you use it as a teachable moment, before you get them to change their mind, before you get them to verbalize, before you get them to make a decision. You have to keep it super simple and maybe focus on things like coping tools, like breathing, tense and releasing, cracking a joke to lighten it up, redirecting their attention somewhere else, right? We have a 6-part series just on that, 6 coping tools that really work. And Sarah, who's a member of the immersion, has it as a bonus course. Yeah, good. Okay, Sarah. So you can even, so the reason why this is tip number 2 and why it works so well with tip number 1, Sarah says, I totally pick a fight with the feeling unknowingly. Really good awareness, Sarah. Nice job. Is to swap it out. So you can swap it out with finding something that makes sense about it, letting them know that you get it enough that, and then they might look at you and say, oh, then you might know how to help me feel better. And then the swap out for picking a fight is offering some kind of coping tool. And whether you do it in front of them, I'm going to take a few deep breaths. This is really intense. Or a roller coaster breath, or one of the many breaths that we learn, right? Or you do it, or you suggest that they do it, or you kind of insist that it happens. Like for example, redirection. We're going to go to the other room and read a book now with your little one, Sarah. I'm thinking in particular. We're going to pull over this car and take a break from this conversation. Thinking with a 10-year-old or older, right? Like a teen or preteen. Sometimes you just need to make the call, and you do whatever it takes to get to the place where things have cooled down. So that's number 2. The mistake to avoid is not taking the time and basically getting it wrong about what your child needs. So you can absolutely think you know more than you do about a situation, and you can misjudge or misperceive what they really need in the moment. And this takes some practice, and I call it lid detecting, because it's like, how far is your lid off? We have a brain in the palm of the hand metaphor we use in my work from Dr. Daniel Siegel. So we just say, how far off is your lid, right? Being a great lid detector is the remedy for mistake number 2, where you think you know, and you think you can just, tell them what happens next, or how they should feel, or how quickly they should recover, and you haven't actually taken the time to take stock of the evidence of how far their lid is off and adjust your approach. It is on us to adjust our approach based on what is happening around us, whether we like it or not. And if we didn't grow up with that model, it takes practice, it takes time, it takes mentorship often, and lots of examples to repattern yourself, but it is possible. I was trial by fire, thrown in with 24 to 36 kids at a time. Boy, did I have to figure out how to pattern myself so that I could adjust based on how upset they were, because I got it wrong a lot, right? Trying to talk a kid through before they're ready, not recognizing that they're being re-triggered, they need to be moved away from the trigger. Like, there's a lot of mistakes we can make around misjudging or misperceiving how upset they are and what they need based on how upset they are. So become a great lid detector. So learn the messages behind the emotions, right? And become a great lid detector with lots of coping tools to offer. Good so far? Yeah? Okay. Third one, and this is one that is not a hard, fast rule, but when it is a recurring pattern, can be really problematic, okay? So this one's a little more subtle, but important. Something that we all can do is that when a big emotion comes up, we get through it, and then we move on as if nothing happened. Now, this is important, though, for a child that's still cooling down, a really young child that just really mostly needed to be redirected. But here's the exception, and it's a really important one. If the same thing keeps triggering your child, or the same situation is going to come up over and over again, if it's the same time of day it keeps happening, please don't ignore that, and take steps to revisit, reset is what we call it in my work, where you revisit what happened and you kind of reset and reorient yourself, kind of updating your, what we call perception database of like, what does this situation even mean? Because I guarantee 2 kids in the back of the car, if they're used to fighting, they're going to pick a fight over and over and over and over again until you break that pattern. Or it's time to get in the bath, meltdown, right? That over and over and over again meltdown. If you don't update their perception database and their sense of what this time can mean or could be, you're likely to keep getting into a rut with big emotions, including tantrums and meltdowns and power struggles. So take the time to update that by revisiting and resetting, asking things like, what could make this more fun? What could make this feel better? Is there something that needs to change here about the limit, the expectation, the routine, the approach, right? Do we need to build in some intrinsic motivation? There's like a lot of ways that you can problem solve that. And as a matter of fact, I run through 7 pillars of raising resilient kids. And within that, there are, Sarah, as she knows, being in the program, just, in her first half of her year, we keep trying different things to see what's going to make it more smoother. But the mistake that I want you all to avoid is moving on like nothing happened or there's no issue here, that we're not stuck in a pattern and just pretend like you don't know that bath is going to be a problem, or seeing this friend is not going to be a trigger, or being with, this uncle who has this funky habit is not going to be a problem later. Like, do something about it. Please don't just avoid it. If it's especially if it's a pattern, or if it's something that your child keeps bringing up. Mom, you left me there. Mom, it wasn't, you were so mean. Mom, that place is yucky, right? Like, they just bring it up. Remember that time when this happened? Remember that time when that happened? If they're bringing it up, take it as a sign. They're unresolved about it. They're still trying to integrate the experience they had meaningfully so that they can feel more comfortable, maybe being in a similar or the same experience again. So please don't ignore patterns, right? First one, avoid picking a fight with a feeling. Number two, don't ignore the evidence. Please, calibrate yourself so you can get a sense of how upset your child is. Don't assume anything until you've really taken a moment to tune in about what they need. Okay. And then the last one is, don't move on like nothing's happened, especially if you're stuck in a pattern and this is something that keeps happening or your child keeps bringing up. You're going to want to do all those other suggestions I said tried. Now, what I want to know is, which of these three mistakes to avoid do you think would be the highest priority for you to tackle first? Because if you're doing all three, I don't want you to feel overwhelmed. I want you to pick one, just like I have all my coaching clients do in my year-long immersion. And in my private practice, I'm always asking, what's the highest priority? What's our next opportunity? What are we going to focus on next? And then we report back, and we chip away at it over time, which is why I like to work with folks for 6 months to a year, or some folks are even in their second and third year, because it's an ongoing process, right? So let's pick something that's the most important. So Sarah put into comments that she usually picks a fight with a feeling unknowingly. Sarah, I'd love to hear if that's your top one. If you're watching the replay, do me a favor. Put in the comments, which one is it? Is it picking a fight with a feeling, jumping to conclusions about what your child needs instead of lid detecting? So you can just put lid detecting. Or the third one, which is, avoiding revisiting it even when you're stuck in a pattern. Okay, great. So Sarah did her work. Good job. Picking a fight with a feeling. And Sarah, maybe write one thing you're going to try instead of that, which could be help them to find the message behind the emotion, right? It's one thing we've been working on. Pick one thing that makes sense about it and reflect it back to them so they can feel like you're on the same team instead of picking a fight, like locking horns, right? Also, I would say build in a way for you to go, I'm triggered. I really want this to stop, instead of being with it. What do I need right now is another option. Okay, what do I need to be able to be with this anger in the room? Because sometimes there's certain emotions that just don't feel safe to us or don't feel like we can hang with them. What do I need to be able to hang with this enough to support my child? And maybe it's a break and they just got to yell for a little while you go take a break and then you come back. So some suggestions, Sarah. Okay, good work, everybody. Until next time. Next week, I believe, is an Ask Me Anything. Let me double check, which means we're going to be answering questions for folks who show up. I'm going to double check. Sorry for the pause. Yes, it is. It's an Ask Me Anything. New folks who've dropped their topics into the chat. I'll be addressing those as many as possible. And then folks who show up live can always pop a question and get some live coaching, get a little taste of what it's like to be in a coaching program where you have a coach at your disposal to ask questions and book sessions with and get your feedback. I just had a bunch of clients book this week because of things that popped up over the weekend. What a smart move, right? Help is available. So if you'd like a taste of that, come to Ask Me Anything next week. It's also a time for folks to start considering jumping into the July cohort of the immersion. We have spots available still. We have a few early bird folks who signed up early, but we also, have a couple of specials running for folks who sign up in the next couple of weeks here. So if that's something that you've been thinking about, what would it be like to be, in a mentorship program with other parents and learning about tools and, getting that confidence and learning like we've been doing here in the Raising Our Resilience community, but in a more concentrated way where you get a lot of personal attention. If that's something you've been interested in, DM me, reach out soon, or just say, I'm interested, and tag me in the comments. That way I know that I should be reaching out to you and seeing if it's a fit to hop in. Okay. All right. Lots of love to you all. Oh, Sarah says, in quotes, makes sense and then you can fill it in, right? Makes sense you're feeling angry. You wanted something and you didn't get to have it. I get that can be frustrating, right? Just give them something so they know you're on the same side. And maybe you need to repeat it 2 or 3 or 4 times, just a heads up. Okay. I'm like, yeah, that can be upsetting, right? I get it. That way they see you as a collaborator on what's next. All right. Lots of love to you all. Take care. Until next time. Bye for now.